Listen closely. You will not get a second reading of this. Somewhere out there, right now, a version of you is still asleep, not in body, but in spirit. Still negotiating with the alarm clock. Still waiting for motivation to knock before doing the work. That version of you is going to lose. Not might. Will. Because the world does not reward potential. It rewards execution. And execution is built one brutal habit at a time, not one comfortable thought at a time. Marcus Aurelius did not sit in a palace dreaming up meditations to sell you peace of mind. He wrote those words on a military campaign, surrounded by plague, betrayal, and war, forcing himself, at the end of every exhausting day, to remain a man worth being. He was not asking you to feel better, he was demanding that you become someone harder to break. That is the entire purpose of what follows. 10 commands, not affirmations, not vibes. Commands you give yourself and then obey, the way a soldier obeys an order he doesn't feel like following. Because feelings were never in charge of this operation. Here is the brutal truth nobody wants printed on a motivational poster. Discipline does not care how you feel this morning. It does not negotiate. It does not wait for inspiration to show up and sign off. The Stoics understood something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. That you are not in control of the world. You are barely in control of your own body half the time. But you are completely, totally, non-negotiably in control of one thing. The part of you that judges, decides, and acts. The Stoics called it the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty. The inner commander. Everything that follows is about putting that commander back in charge of your life. Because right now, for most people, it's been quietly overthrown by comfort, scrolling, and fear, dressed up as practicality. One rule before we start. These are not 10 suggestions you pick and choose from like a buffet. There are 10 fronts in the same war. Skip one, and you leave a gap in the wall. If any part of this lands somewhere true, hit subscribe before you keep going. Because what's coming next builds directly on what you're about to hear. And this channel is not interested in keeping you comfortable. It's interested in keeping you moving. Now stand up straight, even if no one's watching. We begin. Number 1. Rise before your excuses do. Every excuse you've ever made was born in the dark. In that half-asleep window between the alarm and your feet hitting the floor. That is enemy territory. Marcus Aurelius wrote that at dawn, when it's hard to get up, you tell yourself you have work to do as a human being, not as a machine looking for rest, but as a being built for action. The discipline of rising is not about mornings. It is about proving, in the very first decision of the day, that you command your body instead of the other way around. Most people lose before 7 a.m. without ever noticing it, because the first negotiation they had with themselves, they lost. And a man who loses the first battle of the day fights every other battle from behind. So tomorrow, when the voice in your skull whispers 5 more minutes, you do not argue with it. You do not reason with it. You simply move. Discipline that requires debate isn't discipline yet. Get up. That is the whole instruction. Number 2. Rehearse your own ruin. This sounds dark because it is supposed to. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning, before the day could surprise them, they imagined what could go wrong. The insult that might come, the plan that might collapse, the loss that might arrive without warning. Not to live in fear, but to strip fear of its surprise. Seneca said that nothing happens to the wise man contrary to his expectation, because he has already stood at the edge of every disaster in his mind and found that he is still standing. Most people flinch when life turns hard because they were promised, by no one, by nothing, but they believed it anyway, that hard things wouldn't happen to them. You are not making that mistake again. Each day, spend 60 seconds asking yourself, what could go wrong today, and could I survive it? If the answer is yes, You have already won the day before it started. That is not pessimism. That is armor. Number 3. Draw the line of control in permanent ink. Epictetus built his entire philosophy on a single, brutal division. Some things are within your control, and everything else is not. Your judgments, your effort, your responses, yours. The weather, other people's opinions, the outcome of things you've already done everything right to influence, not yours. Most suffering in a human life comes from blurring that line, from fighting battles that were never winnable because they were never yours to fight. You cannot control whether she stays. You cannot control whether they promote you. You cannot control whether the world notices your work. You can control whether you showed up with everything you had. The moment you stop spending energy on what isn't yours to command, you suddenly have an obscene amount of energy left over for what is. Draw that line today. Anything on the wrong side of it, you drop. Immediately. No mourning period. Number 4. Guard the citadel. Your mind is not a public space. It is a fortress, and right now, most men leave the gates wide open. To notifications, to other people's opinions, to every piece of noise that wants to set up camp inside their skull. The hegemonicon, the ruling faculty Marcus Aurelius wrote about constantly, is the part of you that decides what gets in and what gets thrown back over the wall. A fortress with no guard isn't a fortress. It's a hallway. So you start asking, before you let anything occupy headspace, does this deserve to be here? Random anger from a stranger online does not deserve entry. A criticism with a lesson buried in it gets in, briefly, then gets put to work. You are not trying to feel nothing. You are trying to control what's allowed to move you. That is the difference between a man who reacts to everything and a man nothing can move without his permission. Subscribe now if this is hitting something real, because the next 4 commands are where most men quit, and where the ones who don't quit separate themselves permanently from everyone still sleepwalking. Move only with the logos. The Stoics believed the universe runs on reason. They called it the logos, and that a life lived well is a life lived in alignment with that reason, not against it. In practice, this means stripping the drama out of your decisions and asking one cold question: is this the rational next action, or is this just the emotional one? Anger wants you to send the message. Fear wants you to avoid the call. Pride wants you to defend a position that's already lost. The logos doesn't care what you want to do. It asks what makes sense, given who you're trying to become. Build the habit of pausing, just 3 seconds, between the impulse and the action, and asking that question. Most disasters in a man's life were not caused by bad luck. They were caused by skipping that 3-second pause. Number 6. Starve the appetite on purpose. You do not control your cravings by feeding them carefully. You control them by occasionally, deliberately, refusing them entirely. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, cold, hunger, plain food, hard surfaces, not as punishment but as proof. Proof that comfort is a privilege you can survive without, not a need you can't function without. A man who has never said no to himself has no idea what he's actually capable of, because he's never tested the floor. So once a week, deny yourself something easy. Skip the comfort. Take a cold shower. Eat plain. Sit in silence instead of reaching for the phone. You are not doing this to suffer. You are doing this so that nothing the world takes from you later can take your peace along with it, because you already proved you don't need it. Number 7. Interrogate the day before you sleep. Most men replay their day through a haze of feelings. What frustrated them, what went wrong, what they wish they'd said. That is not a reflection. That is just emotional residue. Seneca, Epictetus, and the Stoics who came after them practiced a nightly accounting. Where did I fall short of virtue today? What did I do well? What will I do differently tomorrow? Not self-punishment, self-audit. Cold, Factual, brief. 3 questions, 90 seconds, every single night, no exceptions. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What's the one correction for tomorrow? A man who never audits himself repeats the same failures for decades and calls it bad luck. A man who audits nightly compounds, quietly, until one day everyone calls him disciplined and has no idea it started with 3 questions in the dark. Number 8. Speak less than you want to. Every word you don't need to say is a small act of self-command. Marcus Aurelius warned himself constantly against the temptation to explain, to defend, to argue his worth to people committed to misunderstanding him. The best response to most provocations is the response that never gets given. This is not a weakness. Silence, used correctly, is a weapon with no recoil. It gives away nothing, it costs you nothing, and it forces everyone else to operate without information about what's actually going on inside you. Practice this today. Before you speak in anger, in defense, or for attention, ask whether the words change anything for the better. If they don't,
keep them.
A man who has mastered his mouth has already won most of the conflicts other men are still losing sleep over. Number 9. Make peace with what you cannot undo. This is amor fati, the love of fate, and it is the most difficult command on this list because it asks you to do more than tolerate what's already happened. It asks you to want it, to treat even your worst chapters as necessary material for the man you're becoming, rather than wreckage you're still dragging behind you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the obstacle is the way, that what blocks the path often becomes the path itself. You did not choose every wound, but you choose every single day whether that wound is the excuse or the forge. Stop relitigating what's already finished. The failed business, the ended relationship, the years you can't get back. They are not up for debate anymore. They are raw material. Pick them up and build with them, or set them down and stop carrying weight that's no longer doing anything but slowing you down. Number 10. The train, like the grave, is already dug. Memento mori, remember you will die, was not a Stoic obsession with darkness. It was their sharpest tool for urgency. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he could leave this life right now, and let that fact decide what every action and thought should be. Not because death is coming soon, but because it removes every excuse for wasting today on something that doesn't matter. Ask yourself, honestly, if this were one of your last weeks alive, would you still be scrolling instead of building? Would you still be silent instead of telling the people who matter that they matter? Would you still be waiting for Monday? Most men live as though they have unlimited rewrites of their life. They don't. Neither do you. Let that fact strip away everything fake from your priorities, starting today. 10 commands. Rise before the excuse. Rehearse the ruin before it arrives uninvited. Draw the line between yours and not yours, in ink, not pencil. Guard the gate of your own mind. Move only by reason, not impulse. Starve the appetite on purpose so it never owns you. Audit the day in cold blood. Speak less than the moment tempts you to. Make peace with what's already finished, and train every single day like the time you have left is exactly as limited as it actually is. Because it is. None of this is comfortable. It was never supposed to be. Comfort is what the version of you still asleep right now is chasing, and comfort has never once built a man worth respecting. Marcus Aurelius did not become the philosopher-emperor by feeling inspired. He became him by executing, daily, in the mud, when no one was watching and nothing about it felt good. That is the only path that has ever existed. Not motivation, execution. Today is the first front. Go take it.